Welcome to Aussie Finance Chronicles, where money, history, and power collide right here down under. Now, we're not your typical global channel. We offer a deep dive into Australian financial history, told entirely through the lessons of the Aussies who paved the way. We examine major local events from the gold rushes to the superannuation system to understand the forces of capital, debt, and systemic control. You'll learn how wealth is built and lost by studying the patterns of the past. History doesn't repeat, but it certainly rhymes. By understanding our continent's failures and power plays, you can sharpen your financial sovereignty, master your money mindset, and avoid the traps that took down local empires. Our mission is simple: to ensure every Aussie is equipped with the knowledge to thrive financially. Before 1851, Australia was an idea, a final stop, a punishment. It was a distant, silent, red stain on the world map. But then, a whisper from beneath the ground began to spread. First a rumor, then a headline, then a global cry. Gold! In this documentary, we'll explore the years from 1851 to the 1890s. We're not just digging for gold. We're uncovering how it transformed Australia from a colonial prison into a modern democracy and a global economic force. So, picture this. It's the mid-19th century. But then, the world changed. The 1848 California gold rush began, and by 1849, thousands of Australian men were sailing to San Francisco. This exodus created a labor shortage and the terrifying prospect of economic collapse back home. The government's stance had to change. In 1851, a man named Edward Hargraves, fresh from the Californian goldfields, changed everything, using techniques he learned there. He announced the first commercial gold discovery near Ballarat, New South Wales, a place he called Hofer. The news hit Sydney like a shockwave. In exchange for a government reward, his discovery was officially recognized, and the floodgates opened. Not to be outdone, the governor of Victoria, fearing a mass exodus of his own workforce to New South Wales, offered a massive prize of 200 guineas for a local discovery. Whittinmon's finds were made in Ballarat and Bendigo. Suddenly, Victoria was home to the richest alluvial gold fields on the planet. By the end of the 1850s, it was producing a staggering one-third of the world's gold. The race was on. This discovery triggered one of the greatest migration waves in history. Within 2 decades, Australia's population exploded from 430,000 to 1.7 million. Ships filled with hopefuls from England, Scotland, Ireland, China, America, and Italy set sail for the land of opportunity. The journey itself was an ordeal. Months at sea meant battling storms that snapped masts and enduring diseases like scurvy that decimated crews. The decks were cramped, the lower levels airless. Drinking water ran low, food rotted, and when disease spread, bodies were simply wrapped and cast into the ocean. But hope was a powerful force. The first sight of the Australian coastline was met with cheers after months staring at the sea. Land meant the promise of gold. Arriving in Sydney and Melbourne, newcomers could hardly believe their eyes. Ports that were quiet just years earlier now resembled chaotic, sprawling carnivals. The muddy streets echoed with dozens of languages. Australia was no longer just a British penal colony. It was becoming a center of the world. Melbourne, in particular, grew at an astonishing pace, becoming one of the richest cities on Earth. Tent cities gave way to grand stone buildings. Shops, pubs, and theaters sprang up overnight. The lure of gold was transforming not just individual lives, but an entire continent. Life on the goldfields, however, was far from the easy dream many had imagined. The daily life of a digger was grueling. From dawn till dusk, they plunged their pans into rivers, kneeling in the mud, sifting for a glimmer of color. Most days yielded nothing more than a few specks of dust. Their hands grew calloused, their backs ached, and their diet often consisted of little more than dry bread and salted meat. But every now and then, a cry of Eureka would echo through the camp. The discovery of a single, gleaming nugget could electrify everyone, renewing their hope for another day. It was this big jackpot mentality that kept them going. Life in the camps was harsh. Tents flooded in the rain. Fires were a constant threat, and theft was rampant. A bag of gold dust could be stolen in the dead of night, leading to bloody fights. Drownings in the rivers and collapses in the deep mines were grimly common, yet no one gave up. Here, gold wasn't just a metal. It was the physical embodiment of their dreams. This rush also brought deep-seated tensions to the surface. The arrival of Chinese miners, known for their discipline and organized work methods, sparked envy and resentment among European diggers. This animosity boiled over into violent conflicts, like the Lambing Flat riots, marking some of Australia's first major racial clashes. Adding to the frustration was the government's hated mining license. A fee of 30 shillings a month had to be paid, whether you found gold or not. The troopers, or police, conducted brutal license hunts, raiding tents, and arresting anyone without a permit. Corruption was rife, and the diggers felt they had no legal rights. By 1854, the tension in Ballarat reached its breaking point. The acquittal of a well-connected hotel owner for the murder of a miner was the final straw. In response, furious miners burned the hotel to the ground. Peaceful protest had turned to open rebellion. This culminated on December 3, 1854, at the Eureka Stockade. Led by Peter Lalore, thousands of miners gathered under the newly created Southern Cross flag and swore an oath to defend their rights. They built a makeshift barricade, or stockade. At dawn, Colonial soldiers and police stormed the compound. The battle was short and brutal, lasting only 15 minutes. Dozens of miners and several soldiers were killed. The rebellion was crushed, but its legacy was monumental. Public outrage swelled in support of the miners. When the 13 arrested leaders were put on trial, the jury acquitted them all, defying the government. This forced immediate and sweeping reforms. The hated license system was abolished and replaced with an affordable miner's right, which, crucially, also granted the holder the right to vote. The Eureka Stockade is credited with giving birth to the secret ballot, an Australian innovation that spread worldwide. This event became a cornerstone of Australia's fair go spirit, the idea that ordinary people could stand up to unjust authority and win. In a remarkable turn of events, the rebellion's leader, Peter Lalore, who lost an arm in the fight, was later elected to the Victorian Parliament, proving that change could be achieved from within the system. The economic impact was just as profound. Gold exports brought immense wealth into the country, attracting the attention of London's financial world. This laid the groundwork for Australia's major banks. The newfound riches also financed the nation's first great infrastructure boom. Railways, roads, telegraph lines, and grand public buildings were constructed, physically connecting the continent. A new society was emerging. The old structure of wool barons and convicts gave way to a rising middle class and a powerful working class, with high wage trait that defines Australia to this day. By the late 1860s, the easily accessible alluvial gold was running out. The boomtowns emptied as quickly as they had filled, leaving behind ghost towns of abandoned homes and rusting equipment. The wind whistled through streets that once bustled with thousands. But Australia was forever changed. The silent continent was gone. In its place stood the foundation of one of the world's wealthiest, most multicultural, and most democratic nations. Gold wasn't just a metal, it was a catalyst. The path from that first muddy pan in 1851 to the Federation of Australia in 1901 was paved with gold, forging a new national identity defined by economic strength and a spirit of freedom. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Being part of this great Australian story is a privilege, and sharing these financial histories with my fellow Aussies is an honor. Together, let's learn from our past to build a stronger, more prosperous future for all. If you found this valuable, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon. Every comment and share helps us create more content like this. Let's keep working for a hardworking, honorable, and prosperous Australia. It's great to have you here. Thanks for watching.